Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk,
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos.
A Microsoft MVP, Citrix Charter CTP, VMware vExpert.
And your host, Douglas Brown.
Hi, I'm Doug Brown, and welcome to another episode of DABCC Radio. We have a fabulous episode. We have a brand new company led by one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, a gentleman that I just find extremely impressive because everywhere he goes turns into gold. And I'll let him introduce himself and give his background, but he's been with us a long time. His name is Henrik Rosendahl, and he's at a new company. It's his next world-changing solution, and it's called NeuVector. And what they're doing is securing containers, securing the traffic relating to containers. It's really an awesome solution. So, in something that everyone's going to need. If you're doing containers, you need NeuVector. So, with no further ado, let's just jump into my interview with Henrik, and he can explain everything that they're doing and more. So, here we go. Okay, Henrik, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. You know what? I think this is our, fourth or fifth podcast we've done together? Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
And every time you come on, I always say you weren't on the first podcast, but it was your company that was on the very first podcast, Thinstall. So this
That's
is like,
right.
yeah, this is like old home week. So I really look forward to it. You're on to a bigger and better things, so that's what we're going to talk about. But for those who are not familiar with you, can you tell us who you are and what you do over at NeuVector?
Sure. So, a brief background. I'm Henrik Rosendahl. I'm born in Denmark and actually a very recent U.S. citizen. So
Congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you. And so now I can vote in the election. Not that we should go there. I have been fortunate enough to be involved in some very exciting companies along the way. Thinstall that we sold to VMware in early 2008. I was the CEO for Thinstall, and a lot of your listeners will remember that company. And it was an amazing startup and an amazing group of customers and people. And we had a good stint at VMware, and then got on to CloudVolumes, that in the early days was called SnapVolumes. Then we had to rename it for legal reasons to CloudVolumes, and then we sold that one to VMware, and it's now the AppVolumes product over there. So another great technology that again found a good home at VMware, and then now I'm at this exciting company called NeuVector that is focusing on Docker and container security specifically.
Very cool. Docker, and Docker is definitely all the rage, right? I mean, everybody's talking about Docker. It's just crazy. Talking about disruptive technologies, right?
For sure.
So, there is a lot of hype around containers, not just Docker, but containers, and everyone's creating them too. Microsoft has it in Windows 2016. VMware just talked about it a lot a few weeks ago at VMworld. Can you tell us more about, let's take a step back and tell us more about, or introduce us to NeuVector. And then we'll get
absolutely,
into
right. So with every new platform, there's a new ecosystem forming, right? It was true with VMware and and Citrix, right? Monitoring people, security people, new ways of deploying software. We had the protocols that would compete with ICA and so on and so forth, right? And so even though this containerization has been around for a long time, it finally sort of took off with Docker, and in the wake of all of that, there's a whole bunch of management and monitoring and security that follows along. And so NeuVector is is a part of the old CloudVolumes team. That before CloudVolumes did a startup they sold to Trend Micro. So they got security background, they got virtualization background, and specifically focusing on protecting containers. And right now it's Docker in runtime, and it's very application centric, and that shouldn't really surprise you as both Thinstall and CloudVolumes in so many ways could be described back then as Windows containers. And so there's a lot of application knowledge in this company, and there's a lot of security knowledge. And combining those two and delivering that in the form of a container security platform is what NeuVector does and does very well.
Very cool. Yeah, I always love it when people say, containers have been around a long time. Every time I have a conversation about containers, they always say, it's been around for a long time. Yes, it has. So is virtualization, but it's brand new. What we're talking about now, bringing it into the x86 world, right, into the enterprise IT is brand new. And in return, there are all these, gaps, let's call them, right, and security being one of them. So,
of course, always, right. Anytime you have something that is disruptive or transformational, it literally, the containerization of applications literally messes up your existing security, processes, right? I mean, it messes up everything, right? In so many ways, it's a transformation of the way you deliver, applications to your end user, whether that's a customer or internally, right? I mean, the whole DevOps movement is just turning everything upside down and for the better, but the good old ways of sitting down and specking something out and then writing your use cases and then coding them and having reviews and 6 months goes by and the world changed, right? So DevOps is exactly the opposite of that, much faster turnarounds. But it also means that applications are being, deployed much faster and with lot less sort of oversight than traditional. And therefore, the security and the protection of those containers must follow the application more than trying to be some sort of a static, perimeter defense, right? Which is the sort of the classic, call it old school way of doing it.
Yeah, you got it. As I mentioned earlier, there is this lot of hype around containers these days. Everyone's talking about it. But talking about it and doing it are always two different things. Are people deploying containers in production yet? What are you guys seeing?
So there, I would say everybody's talking about it, right? In fact, the joke is that if Docker charged a penny for every time their logo was being displayed, they would probably make more money than they currently are, right? And so everybody is talking about Docker and containers, and I would say it's basically the brand new companies that are starting from scratch are having a bit of an advantage, right? Because they can start without too much legacy, and we see a lot of the sort of mobile applications, they're basically coming right out of the gate, developing their solution directly on top of Docker. And yes, so they're doing it in production, and it's sort of like very narrow and focused. Every enterprise customer that we talk to right now are looking at it, no doubt about it. But they have hundreds, if not thousands, of applications that they need to sort of reconsider what to do. Does it make sense? They just almost finished the transformation to VMware, right? And now it's time to sort of start moving off VMs and onto containers, and what does that mean? So they're going through sort of the motions, and yes, they're all looking. Far fewer of the Fortune 500 are actually in production at this point, I would say.
Very interesting. So, it is so early in the container space, right? And as the container industry grows, do you see Docker being the leader, or do you see companies going with solutions they might already have, right? Something like a VMware Photon or a Windows 2016 that has this stuff, that's containers.
It's too early to tell, right? Right now, Docker is definitely top of mind, right? It's what people are using. It's, they've done an amazing job of positioning themselves, and it's a great marketing company. Is the winner going to take it all? I don't think so. I think it's going to sort of pan out that there's going to be, multiple different platforms that will have its own benefits and drawbacks, like anything else, right? But potentially this, if they're keeping up, right, it ends up being sort of a VMware play where VMware, ends up owning, 80% of the market, and the remaining 20% is scattered. But who knows? It's too early to tell. It's still the Wild West.
Yeah. Does it matter to you? Does it matter to NeuVector who, what type of container solution that people are using?
No, not at all. The more the merrier, actually. Right? From a sort of security startup perspective, the more sort of solutions you introduce to your data center, the more risk you absorb, and therefore the more opportunity for us. So absolutely. Windows containers side by side with Docker, with CoreOS, with unikernels. Bring it on.
Cool. And we'll get into later on, exactly dive deeper into, as I always say, peel the layers off the onion of your solution. But let's keep on going. So what stage are you guys at? You guys are, Docker's brand new. This is early stage, as you mentioned. You guys are, well, I'll just ask, what stage are you guys at?
Yeah, so NeuVector has been around for about 9 months now, and we've been hard at work here in the Bay Area. We have now deployed the solution with about a dozen beta customers, and received some very cool feedback that we are implementing, and we're sort of at the place now where we can provide limited releases both to cloud platforms as well as enterprise customers that are sort of our focus.
So when you say limited release, I can go in, I can apply and download it?
Yes, you can. Okay. We got that available on the website.
Perfect. And we'll definitely we'll throw out links, and they'll be in the show notes, of course, NeuVector.com, and then at the end of the podcast, as always.
Yep.
You guys are security, so security is definitely is at the top of everybody's mind, and with new technologies, it's always very important to figure out how do we secure these. I hear this containers are actually more vulnerable than virtual machines, which is interesting. Why is that?
I mean, the short answer to that, Doug, is that they're sharing, the kernel space, right, between the different apps, between the different containers. So, by design, it's more vulnerable, right? VMware did an amazing job of isolation, right, and also touting the security of the isolation between the virtual machine and the hypervisor itself, right? And so, that took many years, right, before people trusted VM. And that inherent security, and isolation there. Dockers, or containers and different, are sharing kernel space. So by design, it's more vulnerable. Does that mean that you can't take steps to protect it? No, of course not. And it will be better. It will be more granular. The platform will evolve. The space that exists right now is that there's a lot of companies that are trying to rush to production with containers. And the platform as it stands today is just not secure enough, and so that's where NeuVector comes in.
Well, doesn't Docker take care of security itself? Why the need for a third party?
Yeah, there is Docker is doing some, and there are other startups in this space. Currently the focus has been mostly on registry scanning, right? So if you use Docker Hub, then you upload your stuff there, and things are being scanned and it's being certified, and so you should be good, right? And so if you only go from Docker Hub and only use containers, in a read-only mode, then in theory you should be fine. The problem is that for the remaining 98% of us, we're not going to do that. We're going to fiddle with this container. We're going to change it a little bit. We're going to take our own applications that never ended up on Docker Hub and put it in production. And oh, by the way, we are going to use a whale Docker release because that's what we had on our laptop. And, all of those factors, basically make it, risky. And because of the shared kernel space, if one container is compromised, you can basically assume that everybody else is compromised, right? So that is the problem. In a virtual environment with VMware, yes, you could have a compromised VM, but there was no way they could leap from that VM to the hypervisor and over to another VM. That is unfortunately the case. So if the world was perfect and you only used certified images, sure, I think Docker is doing a great job. But the reality is different, and that's creating an opportunity for NeuVector, right?
Yep. I love the Docker Hub idea. That's just great stuff. That's just really, really great. Do you see security issues with Docker, or perceived security issues with Docker slowing down adoption?
Oh, for sure. No, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely, if you look at all the surveys out there, from analysts, the VM World, they did a survey a couple of weeks ago here in Las Vegas, right? And they were, security is top of mind for companies using Docker. And so, what we're trying to do is say, look, go ahead, establish your DevOps processes, and, we don't really care so much about the registry. It's fine if you do that and if you do code scan and, all good stuff. But, really where NeuVector comes in and shines is runtime, right? We do everything basically in real time. So if your container is compromised and you deploy it in production, we will catch it there and basically ultimately will block traffic that is abnormal, right? And because we have both a security background and an application background, we have a lot of inherent knowledge about the top 30 most deployed Docker applications, right? Such as Nginx is top of the list, and Redis, and WordPress, and MongoDB, and all those classic sort of Dockerized applications. And so we know inherently what is normal and what is abnormal behavior for those applications. And without any configuration, we can tell you whether or not you're running a secure environment or not.
Very cool. Well, that was my next question. You're one step ahead of me, Henrik. You're always one step ahead of me. That's my problem with you. Let's talk about NeuVector. Let's talk about your solution, right? Let's start peeling the layers off the onion. So first question is, what is this? Technically,
right.
Is it? It's a container, and then what do I walk us through this process? You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. So NeuVector itself is a container, right? We believe that is the only way that you can keep up with a containerized environment is by being a container, right? And it's also like we deploy with Docker Compose or with Rancher or with Swarm. It doesn't matter, right? It's sort of use whatever you have available to you, right? And then literally we just drop the container into the host and we start looking around, what traffic is going on, what containers are here, what processes are loaded, how do these containers talk to each other, how do they talk to the other hosts? And in a matter of a few days, we will have a pretty good idea of what's going on. And this is literally without any configuration. We have what's called machine learning or self-learning policies that are being derived in the background based on actual traffic. And then you can, of course, make your own exceptions, make your own manual policies, but 95% of the cases, you don't actually even have to configure anything. And we will just learn what is normal and abnormal behavior. And we will also have a lot of sort of inherent knowledge about most of the standard applications that you're using from the Docker Hub.
How do you get this information? Does Are you guys, tapping the wire? Does it go through your container? What kind of load does that put on the network?
Yeah, so we're using, we're looking at the network traffic, of course, but we're also using a lot of other data, such as, what processes are loaded, what applications are they, what are the files that are in those applications, and what are the traffic patterns, what's going on here. The other day, we were doing a POC at a very, very large, e-commerce site. And we found a slow loris, attack where a hacker from a Chinese university was sending a few packets an hour to this container, and there's no way a firewall can sort of really see that. There's too much traffic, and we just noticed that there was some inbound traffic through containers that didn't look sort of normal, right? This wasn't a normal behavior for this application, and we'll flag it, and eventually you can just click on it and block it and be done with it. So it's a combination of a lot of tricks in the trade, of course.
Interesting, and your co-founders, so you guys they're former Symantec, AV guys, right? I mean, this is what they educated on how to spot problems, right?
Trend Micro.
Trend. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, and Fortinet, right? So, and VMware. So we got a a sort of a nice mix of talent here. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what's the management like? So this, NeuVector's doing its thing. What do I see as an administrator?
Well, so there are actually three sort of elements to the solution, right? There is what we call the enforcer, and the enforcer is the container that goes on every host. And it is, not surprisingly, the one that enforces the security policies, but it's also, the one that records the traffic and logs the processes and so on and so forth. And then, it sends that data back to what's called a controller. So you have basically sort of a multi-tenant architecture. You can have multiple enforcers, you can have one controller per tenant, and then you can have a manager per controller or a manager for a bunch of controllers. So you can manage multiple environments simultaneously. And the controller basically is the one that is gathering all the information across different hosts and start correlating the information that it's getting, right? But it's a single repository for one customer environment. And so that's how it's going. And the manager is just REST API, so it can be anything really. You can manage it with CLI, an API, use our manager if that's compelling. And on the back end, we got a pretty interface, right? But we also realize that most enterprise customers they don't want another monitoring tool, right? They want it in Nagios or Splunk or wherever they do. So we integrate with Syslock and then from there into Splunk, for instance.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to hear. So, you also mentioned earlier machine learning, self-learning, and this is something I'm actually quite interested in. I've actually read a couple books on machine learning. Not that I understand it, but I definitely like to read about it. And so what do you mean by machine learning policies? What does this really mean?
Well, I mean, it basically means that algorithmically we learn based on actual behavior, right? So we're looking at the traffic, and we're preloaded with a ton of information, but we're also learning along the way. And so you can literally put the system into a learning mode from where we will derive policies, right? So let's say for instance you have an app that needs to call home every week to get a refreshed license key, right? That's a good example, right? So it needs once a week to actually, ping an external site and get permission to continue to run. And so that would be considered an abnormal behavior. All of a sudden, this application that doesn't talk to anyone externally once a week pings this external site, right? Normally you would block such traffic and then the application would stop and, all triage has to happen. But what we do is basically say, hey, look, put NeuVector in learning mode, go get your license key and take it out of learning mode. And we have now learned that this is normal behavior, right? That's the manual way of doing it. The machine way is basically saying, hey, we know that a database is not supposed to talk to external websites. Or, for instance, if you've got like a node container that talks to a Redis backend, then the traffic is not supposed to reverse. All those things, right? That and we get smarter and smarter based on actual behavior. That's really how we define machine learning.
Makes sense. Well, machine learning and learning in general comes from data, right? The more data you have, the better the better your conclusions are, right? Sure. Are you guys able to learn across your customer base, or is the learning happening within the customer's enterprise? Make sense?
Well, right now it's within the enterprise, but we do have what's called a store, the NeuVector store, that ultimately will allow us to share policies across customers, right? It's something that we're working on in a multi-tenancy environment, rather than from enterprise to enterprise, because I'm guessing that very few large customers want to actually share their security policies.
Sure.
Right. That's just the way it is, and we're going to be able to sort of black box that. But if you're in a multi-tenant environment, such as a cloud provider, sure, you want to share some of the policies across your hundreds or thousands of customers.
Yeah. Well, a lot of data is being anonymized nowadays, and sharing is almost a common trait nowadays, although it definitely scares me. But I understand. Okay, Henrik. Well, that's pretty much what I had for you. So now we get into my last couple questions, which are always some of my favorites, right? Competition and future. So containers is a new Wild West, as you said. In fact, you used those words exactly. So I imagine there's other people, and you even said there's other people doing security. How do you compare and contrast to these guys? Why should I care about what you're doing? And of course, why should I go with a solution like what you're doing versus what Docker's doing, right? So
yeah, right. I mean, this is the Wild West, right? And it creates a lot of opportunity, it creates a lot of sort of space that you can carve out. What NeuVector is doing is we're carving out the runtime protection and the application protection. That's really what we're trying to do here, right? There are other solutions, and Docker and the Docker platform that are focusing on scanning code and scanning files, before they get stamped at the registry. All good stuff. It's just not a part of what we have chosen to focus on, right? You've got the classic security companies, McAfee, again, not Intel anymore, Symantec, Trend, right? That, as any big company is sort of late to the game, right? And so, it is the Wild West in terms of what's out there. It's maturing rapidly, and we basically want to carve out a space for runtime and application protection.
Got it. Future. So you guys are relatively new. The space is relatively new. What can we expect from you in the future? Where are you going?
Well, I think you alluded to this earlier, right? Is this for Docker only, right? And the reality is that, our focus right now is Docker and containers, but we also have to realize that if we want to sell into an enterprise, you got a very sort of fragmented, infrastructure, right? You got VMs, you got bare metal, you got public cloud, maybe you got a bunch of applications running in Amazon, maybe you got a bunch of it running in-house, right? And so basically being able to cope with that is a part of the roadmap, no question, in no particular order.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
And for my last question for you, and probably the most important question is where do I go to learn more? And of course, how do I get my hands on the product?
Yeah. Great. So on NeuVector's website, NeuVector.com, you can request a demo. You can request the product download. And currently we have all the demo videos behind a password protection. So if you just ask us, we will get in contact with you and give you as a password, and you can see all the cool stuff we do with Rancher and with Mesas and all the other platforms that we have integrated to.
That's great. That's great. And again, for the listeners, this is if we're talking a lot about Docker, but if you're trying, I know a lot of you guys are VMware guys, and they have their Photon release, so it works with all that. It does, like you said, the more the merrier, right?
Yeah, we're demoing it on Photon every day, actually. So
that's awesome.
Yep, of course, right? We're all VMware guys. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, what am I thinking?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Henrik. Well, that's what I have for you. So thank you so much for your time today. I'll go ahead and give you the last word. If there's anything else that, we left out or what have you, or we can, forever hold your peace, right? Until next time.
I think my last word would be, how many more of these can we do, Doug?
That's up to you, my friend. That's up to you.
We'll see.
The one thing I like about you, Henrik, is you never come to me with a boring technology.
Well, that is true.
You came to me with I was introduced to you with what was Primatech, which at the time was the best monitoring solution for Citrix, right? And then Citrix bought like the fifth best, and then then you moved over to these three guys in a garage in San Francisco and built up Thinstall, right, which turned into VMware ThinApp. They did some storage stuff, which was phenomenal, and then helped build CloudVolumes, right, which was now App Volumes at VMware. Are you going to do a boring startup for me?
Who knows, right? You're welcome to shut me up if I show up with one.
Yeah. No. It's always my pleasure to have you on, because it's always the neatest technology in one of the most emerging spaces. So you got a very good eye. I always tell my friends, Henrik is one of those guys you should know, and follow him around, and you probably won't be in danger.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Doug.
That's a nice compliment right there. But it is. It's a result from your, it's earned. What do I say? So on that note, hey, buddy, thank you so much again for doing this with me. And we'll bring you back, hopefully not with a new company, hopefully soon with, part 2 of what's new with NeuVector, right?
We'll look forward to that.
Perfect. On that note, thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Doug.
Okay, that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. As always, I want to thank my guest for today, Henrik Rosendahl from NeuVector. And Henrik is an old friend of mine, just a downright great human being, smart as all can be. And I've always said, you want to know what's going on, you want to know where the world's going, you want to know the future, just follow Henrik around. It's proven, it's just downright proven. And he's at the new company, NeuVector, it's just great stuff. Great technology. Containers are part of the future, right? And if you're going that way, you need to secure them. Definitely check out what NeuVector is doing. Apply for the download. Get the download and try this thing. Pop it into your, Docker, VMware, you name it, into your container solution and have at it. And on that note, I want to thank each and every one of you guys, the most important people, each and every one of you guys for listening to DABCC. If you like the show, definitely share it with a friend. Tell a friend. Tweet about it. Facebook it. Put it on LinkedIn. Put it on your blog. Let the world know you love DABCC Radio. And if you don't love it, well, let me know, because we would love to improve it. Definitely head on over to dabcc.com for the latest and greatest just IT news, really. It's everything. We do Docker, Citrix, obviously, VMware, Microsoft, Red Hat, you name it, Cisco, you name it, in all that ecosystem. So it's a great way to stay up to date with the latest and greatest. And, of course, we just updated our mobile apps, too. So if you're on Android or iOS, head on over to the appropriate store, search for DABCC, download the mobile app. You'll love it. It's a great way to just stay up to date when you're on the go. When you're trying to kill the time, instead of going to TMZ app, go to the DABCC app. Much better acronym. So, on that note, thanks to each and every one of you for listening to DABCC Radio.
Can you say DABCC? D-A-B-B-C.
Say it again, D-A-B-C-C.
D-A-B-B-C.
Can you say it again, D-A-B-C-C?
D-A-B-B-C.
How about D-A-B-C-C?
D-A-B-B-C.
D-A-B-C-C.
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 D-A-B-C-C.